Hello, once again, audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, back today to not do a review, but to address a question that has shown up frequently in some of my most recent reviews. But before I get into that, please remember to like and subscribe to my channel. And if you like what I am doing here, please be on the lookout for ways that you can support me in other ways moving forward. All right. What is that question that has been asked a lot? So within the last month, I have reviewed both the Audeze LCD-X 2021 edition, and I have reviewed the Audeze LCD-5. On both videos, which I will link to in the description down below, I have gotten the question, how do those two compare to each other? And I've gotten the question enough that I probably need to address it here in video form, so that's what I'm doing here. And I also want to address a more broad point in how we can compare gear that is on different performance tiers. Okay, so let's talk about performance tiers and what they mean for a moment. So in audio, it is generally true, and there are exceptions to this, of course, but as a general rule, you get what you pay for. All right, so if you look at like just the headphone game, where we have headphones, headphone amps, that sort of thing, there's kind of an entry-level tier, which is, maybe around $100, $150, where to break into audiophile-grade gear, you're spending about that much money. Then in like maybe the $200 to $300 range-ish. And again, these are not hard boundaries. These are just examples to help make this discussion hopefully productive. All right, in maybe the $200 to $300-ish range, you have what you could call a budget enthusiast tier. All right, and then $500 plus or minus 100 or so, you might have what we call like the entry into the mid-fi level. And then you get a little bit higher. There's a $1,000 tier, maybe a $1,500 tier, a $2,000 to $3,000 tier, a $3,000 plus. In headphones, in particular, like the top of the line tier tends to be around $4,000 plus right now. Okay, and it is generally true, not 100%, and there are exceptions to this, but it is generally true that you pick random $200 headphone, for example, and random $4,000 headphone, that the $4,000 headphone is going to outperform the $200 one in every technicality to a fairly significant degree. There might be like one exception, maybe two exceptions, where there are $200 headphones that really stand out and do one thing, maybe just one thing, really well that punches way, way above its price, but those are rare, all right? Very rare. So again, we're speaking in generalities here. All right. So if you were to ask, say, how does the Beyerdynamic DT880 compare to the HiFiMan HE1000 V2, a $200 headphone versus a $3,000 headphone? Okay. For one thing, we have to start talking about how the HE1000 V2 is just technically superior all the way across the board. And then you have to mention that you have different signatures and that they're both going for different use cases and all that. That's just a very, very difficult and I think ultimately fairly unhelpful comparison to make. All right, now the LCD-X 2021 and the LCD-5 present a different case, I think. And that is because they actually are on the same progression line, to my ear anyway. Meaning that if you are sitting at LCD-X 2021 and you like its sound and its overall presentation, the LCD-5 is very similar to that. And it's going to provide you a more complete, more refined, and overall technically superior but similar sounding presentation to the LCD-X 2021. And so it's in those cases where the more expensive item is a direct upgrade from the lesser expensive item that we can start to more effectively compare across tiers. Okay, so with that said, and I'm holding air here with these, I normally like to have the headphone, either in my hand or on my head when I do these reviews. because, well, it just is better TV, right? But this time I had to send both the Audeze models on to the next people in the loan queue, so I don't have them anymore, unfortunately. But this question, how do they compare, was asked enough that I need to address it. So I just gave you the bottom line here a moment ago. The LCD-5 is a direct upgrade from the LCD-X. Okay, if you are on the LCD-X, the 2021 edition, and you like that sound, the LCD-5 is probably what you're looking for if you want that sound with top-of-the-line level technicalities. So they are both very neutrally tuned. The LCD-5 gets even closer to neutral than the LCD-X does. They still suffer a little bit from some mid-forwardness, okay, some shoutiness kind of thing. The LCD-X 2021, definitely more so than the LCD-5. The LCD-5 mostly just hints at that problem and doesn't necessarily deliver on that problem, which might be a weird way to say it, but I hope you understand what I mean. Okay, the only technical area where some people might consider the LCD-X superior, and I don't agree that it's superior, but some people might, just because this sometimes is linked in people's heads, is that the LCD-X at first seems to have a bigger soundstage. Okay, the LCD-X is one of the bigger sound stagers in like the $1,200 to $1,800 price range. Okay, and it's big in terms of width and height. It is not quite as big as, say, a Hi-Fi Min Aria or like the older Hi-Fi Min Edition XV2. Soundstage size and just sounding big and grand is Hi-Fi Min's game at that price point, and they are leading the pack in that particular area at that price point. But the LCD-X is not far behind in that regard. It's bigger than the models I've heard from Fostex and ZMF, for example, okay, at that, and even Focal at that price point. All right, how the 5 then, the LCD-5 is not as wide or as tall, but it does have better depth. And the LCD-5 sound staging is more coherent and more balanced in terms of the 3 dimensions, width, height, and depth. The LCD-X does not do the depth as well. So it's not quite wall of sound. There is some depth there, but it's not nearly as coherent or complete in the depth dimension as the LCD-5 is. But outside of that, the LCD-5 outclasses the X in every other way. Okay, they both are similarly easy to drive, so that's not really an issue. They both have pretty good macrodynamic impact, slam, that sort of thing, particularly in the low end. I don't know that the LCD-5 is more dynamic or more impactful than the LCD-X. They're probably similar in the amount of impact, but the 5's, like, it's quicker and more nimble in the low end in that regard. Okay, but resolution, timbre and tonality, and all of those things strongly in the LCD-5's favor. And then also not to be ignored is how successfully Audeze addressed a lot of the physical comfort and build issues that I think a fair term is plagued. Okay, that plagued their LCD line basically since its inception. Like for well over a decade, Audeze's have been heavy and very hit or miss on the comfort. And the LCD-5 is much lighter and just a far more comfortable headphone than classic Audeze LCD designs, of which the X 2021 is of that more classic design. All right, so I hope that answers the question for those of you who had it, because I got that question a lot. So once again, until next time, I am Wave Theory, and enjoy the music.